Gojo being a false Buddha, Sukuna actually being the demon who is the enemy of Buddha. Today we'll look at all the Buddhist mythological references, gods and demons behind Jujutsu Kaisen. Let's start with the one everyone's hyped about right now, Mahoraga. Actually, he has a full name that I didn't even know, right? His real name is Eight-Handled Sword Divergent Sila Divine General Mahoraga. He's actually a Shikigami, and Shikigami in the Jujutsu universe are monstrous creatures that even look like cursed spirits, but they're not. They're kind of summons that are used to serve a sorcerer. Mahoraga, as far as I know at least, might be the most powerful of them. He's part of the 10 Shadows technique that belongs to the Zenin clan, which is the technique that Megumi uses. And also, in Jujutsu Kaisen module, Yuta's granddaughter, or daughter, I think it's his granddaughter, also uses it. What makes Mahoraga extremely overpowered is the fact that he has a wheel on his head that keeps spinning. Every time the wheel spins, he adapts. So if you go there and punch Mahoraga and the wheel spins, the next time you try to punch him, it won't work. And apparently he doesn't just adapt to attacks, okay? Because he has a kind of infinite evolution there. If you have an invincible defense, he'll adapt to that too, and he'll find a way to beat you up, even with the defense you have. But now, talking about the mythological references behind Mahoraga, he has several. He's actually a walking reference, starting with the class he belongs to, the Shikigami, which also exist in Japanese mythology or folklore. Shikigami would be spirits or servants used by the so-called onmyoji, who are masters of traditional Japanese esotericism, and they are used in rituals for various purposes. Some are used as good luck charms and others as protective amulets, and some are also used as curses. Look at that. Summoning a Shikigami means calling forth a type of god, a demon, a yokai, a ghost, and using its power for your own purpose, whatever that may be. Shikigami are extremely powerful and dangerous beings, and they appear in many forms. The most common ones are kind of small objects like paper strips or amulets. Others can serve as a form of animal possession, using the bodies of chickens, cows, and dogs as vessels. The most terrifying Shikigami take the forms of humans, ghosts, yokai, or oni, which can be ogres or demons. Also mention the reference that Mahoraga liked mythological t-shirts, my friend. Mythological t-shirts are now available at my buddy Katsumito's store. If you love mythology and want a shirt like mine, for example of Apollo, check them out. They have Apollo, Aphrodite, and Zeus shirts. They have them in white, black, and even cropped styles. Go check it out, it's really worth it, all right? Well, now getting more into Mahoraga itself, we have a lot of references in his very name, like in the case of Sila Divine General Mahoraga. And Sila, in this case, is a Buddhist concept that refers to morality and ethics. There are 10 precepts of Sila, like, for example, not killing. The others are, for example, abstaining from taking what was not given, meaning not stealing, not engaging in improper sexual conduct, not lying, not using intoxicating substances, not eating at inappropriate times, avoiding dances and shows and not indulging in worldly desires, abstaining from adornments and perfumes, not sleeping in high or luxurious beds, and also not accepting gold. Now, the rest of Mahoraga's name, for example, Divine General, has to do with his original name, right? Because Mahoraga's original name ends with Makora, or Makora, something like that. And Makora is one of the 12 divine generals who protect the healing Buddha. The other 11 in this case would be Kubra, Basara, Makira, Antera, Anira, Sanjira, Indara, Hira, Shindara, Shotora, and Bikara. He also has a connection with the number 8, right? Being called the general of the 8-handled sword. This could actually refer to two things. First, to the Dharma chakra, which is that little wheel on top of his head that he uses to adapt. Actually, it has connections with several different religions. But since Jujutsu Kaisen focuses more on Buddhism, I'll talk about its connection with Buddhism here. In this case, the wheel represents movement and overcoming obstacles. And it's made up of 8 spokes, as you can see, right? Representing the Eightfold Path. These are the paths or the rules that you have to follow to achieve enlightenment in Buddhism. Well, in Mahoraga's case, every time the wheel turns, it's an adaptation he makes. In Buddhism, every time the Dharma chakra turns, it's a path of the Buddha that you end up learning. In this case, these 8 paths would be having the right view, understanding reality as it is, understanding the 4 noble truths, and the existence of suffering. The second path is the right intention, having the mental commitment to act with kindness, detachment, and without violence. The third path is having right speech, not lying, not gossiping, not using aggressive words, and not speaking unnecessarily. The fourth is having right action. Act in a way that you do not harm others. Do not kill, do not steal, do not engage in improper sexual conduct, etc. The fifth is to have a right livelihood. You should have a job, but a job where you don't harm anyone. Like, for example, I don't know, being a hitman or something like that. The sixth is to have right thought, or rather right effort, right? You should always think positively and avoid negative thoughts. Have the right mindfulness. That is, you should be fully aware of your body, the sensations of the mind, of mental objects in the present moment. And the eighth is to have the right concentration. You must have the necessary focus through meditation to achieve states of clarity and deep peace. Now, the name itself, Mahoraga, is the name of a mythological character. Actually, not a character, but a mythological species. I don't think it's just part of Buddhism, no, but also of Hinduism and Jainism. The Mahoragas wouldn't just be monsters, but guardian deities. They are spiritual and celestial beings known as great serpents. Unlike the Nagas, who are more associated with cobras, the Mahoragas are linked to massive serpents like pythons. In art, they are depicted as anthropomorphic beings. They often have the body of a man with the head of a serpent, or a human body from the waist up and a serpent's tail below. They are protectors of the Dharma, that is, the cosmic law that maintains order in the universe. Do you remember when I said the 8 in Mahoraga's full name might relate to two things? One being the Buddha's eightfold path, and the other reason is possibly the 8 legions, also known as Hashibushu, which the Mahoragas are part of, which would be 8 beings, 8 classes of beings that are responsible for protecting the Dharma. The Mahoraga is one of them, and the others are the Devas, or 10, who are celestial beings and gods that live in the realm of pleasure and light. The Naga, or Ryu, who are serpent-shaped deities. The dragon that I mentioned earlier is connected to the Nagas, right? The Yaksha, or Yaksha, who are nature spirits that can be benevolent guardians or terrible demons. They often protect treasures from sacred places. Gandharvas, who are celestial musicians, feed only on aroma and musical herbs, serving the court of the gods. Asuras, who are famous for being in constant conflict, right? They are warrior demigods, driven by pride and anger, and Karuras, who are gigantic creatures in the form of birds. Interestingly, they are the enemies of the Nagas. And finally, we have Kinnara, who are known as the celestial musicians with horns. They are often depicted as half human and half bird, and have voices of extreme beauty. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, share, and hype it up as well. And if you want to help me even more, become a member of the channel, which costs less than 5 Ries. You give me incredible support to keep up the work here. And you also get early access to videos and exclusive videos. And you can also end up buying the products that are showing up on the screen right now. Like, for example, this cute mini Mahoraga. When you click and take a look, you'll already be helping me out. Or you can also click on the videos in the pinned comment. Now let's keep going. Now let's talk about Sukuna, who is the main villain of Jujutsu Kaisen. He actually has 2 references. And wait, if you think about it, I think there are actually 3 references there. Because what exactly is Sukuna? He was, according to what they say, back in the Heian era, an extremely powerful sorcerer, capable of massacring several sorcerers. He even started to take on a monstrous form, having multiple arms and multiple eyes. And at the end of his human life, he ended up kind of turning into a cursed object, splitting his soul into 20 fingers. And now, moving on to mythology, right? We do have a Sukuna in mythology, yes, according to mythology or maybe even Japanese history, right? Ryomen Sukuna, which translates to two-faced demon. He would be a character who appeared in very ancient times, in the province of Ida, over in Japan, during the reign of Emperor Nintoku. But the thing is, his stories are kind of conflicting. Some people say he was a demon, a specter. Others even say he was a god, or just an ordinary man. According to some descriptions of him, he had a monstrous appearance, having 2 faces, 4 arms. He had superhuman strength, and he also wielded swords and bows with extreme skill. For the central government at the time, which was the Yamata court, Sukuna was seen as a cruel villain, a rebel who spread chaos, and he refused to obey the imperial laws, eventually being defeated by a general named Takifurukuma under the emperor's orders. However, for the local people and those from the region, Sukuna's magic was completely different. They say he was a god, a deity, a benevolent being who was just representing the people. And according to some, the cultural hero who introduced Buddhism to the region. Well, while we have Gojo and also the Jujutsu Kaisen universe kind of representing the Buddha or the false Buddha, and I'll explain why in a moment. Sukuna would be the complete opposite. Sukuna would be kind of like evil enlightenment, in quotes. In Buddhism, the goal is to get rid of ego and desires, and Sukuna ended up doing the complete opposite. He reached the level of divine power through the total satisfaction of his desires. Even Sukuna's domain expansion is kind of like that, right? The malevolent shrine, which refers to a shrine that houses a deity, right? But the whole design of this domain expansion in this shrine is decorated with skulls and horns. This suggests that, in fact, he is a god who doesn't demand worship, but only total submission. Now, talking about the mudra, right? Sukuna uses that mudra to activate his domain expansion. The mudra he forms is a sign of evil, referencing Yama, the underworld god in Japanese and other mythologies. There's also another point about Sukuna. It's kind of like there's always a running joke with him about cannibalism, right? For example, the malevolent shrine itself that I mentioned to you, and the fact that he's always hungry, wanting to finish off people for destruction and so on. And interestingly, in mythology, we have the Gaki, who are hungry spirits, beings that are never satisfied with anything. They're always looking for more and more. Oh, and when Sukuna is there facing Mahoraga, he ends up making a reference as well to Japanese mythology, to Yamata no Orochi.
I believe so. Reference, you heard it.
In this scene, he says that Orochi and Mahoraga look alike because both of them adapted to his attacks. Yamata no Orochi is a multi-headed dragon from Japanese mythology who ended up facing the god Susanoo after the god was expelled from heaven. Yamata no Orochi ended up being defeated through a plan by Susanoo. He left some sake for him when he came to take the princess from a kingdom. The dragon was finished.
Mano, Sake dormiu e Susanoo derrotou ele e até mesmo abriu a sua barriga.
From there, he took the sword called Kusanagi, which he gave as a gift to his sister, Amaterasu. Now let's talk about the SG duo, Satoru Geto and Suguru Gojo. I got it mixed up. It's Satoru Gojo and Suguru Geto. Actually, I think they would be two Buddhist monks, right? Except that one ended up reaching enlightenment and the other was corrupted. Starting with Geto, right? He wears those clothes that really resemble the clothes of a Buddhist monk, ironically, right? Monks would take vows to protect and have compassion for all living beings. But Geto, from what it seems, decides that only sorcerers deserve to live, calling humans monkeys. That's actually a reference to the ignorant monkeys mentioned in Buddhist texts, and also Geto's curse manipulation. It's a very easy metaphor to understand once you realize that Jujutsu Kaisen has a lot of Buddhism in it. In this case, when he swallows curses, it can be seen as taking in the suffering and negative karma of the world. Geto becomes a kind of priestly figure, a distorted sacrifice, so to speak, and he gets sick by cleansing the world, in quotes. I would even say that's why. In fact, Geto wears black Buddhist monk robes to show that he is a distorted and corrupted Buddhist monk. Unlike his best friend, who would be the closest representation we have in this universe, Jujutsu Kaisen, right? Of a Buddha, of an enlightened being, which is Satoru Gojo, who would be the strongest sorcerer of his time. That's because he inherited both infinity and the six eyes, which, well, I'll try to explain here. But if I say anything wrong because it's a bit confusing, feel free to correct me in the comments. In this case, these two things give Gojo the ability to practically not be hit by anything, or almost anything, right? Because, Anyway, I won't give any spoilers here, and the six eyes gives him an extrasensory ability. In the case of infinity, you can also remember sunyata, which is a Buddhist idea that all things are empty of an independent and permanent existence. And in the case of the six eyes, besides being an obvious reference, it's the famous third eye, right? Which exists in various mythologies around the world, like, for example, Shiva's. It could also be a kind of reference to the six realms of Buddhism, right? Or samsara, which would be the six realms that people go through in the wheel of reincarnation. And also the six visions, or also called abinya, which would be 6 types of supernatural powers, or direct knowledge achieved through deep meditation and enlightenment. One of these faculties is divyakakso, which would be the divine eye. This eye allows one to see beyond ordinary reality, to see the karma of other people, to see through objects, to observe the rebirth of beings, to see energy on invisible levels. And Gojo, impressively, does exactly that. He sees the flow of cursed energy at an atomic level and processes information that no normal human could handle well. Besides that, like I told you, Gojo also has the mudra, right? That he uses to activate his domain expansion. At first glance, you might think it's just stylish, the way he walks around with his fingers crossed. But it's not. It's not just that. That sign is the mudra of Taisha Kute, also called Saka, which was originally a sign of Indra from Hinduism, the god of thunder. But Gojo's coolest reference isn't any of those. No, at least in my opinion, it's in that scene before he defeats Toji, when he says his iconic line, right? In all of heaven and earth, I am the most honored, or I am the only honored Shinwan. Well, that line is a direct influence from Buddha himself, Siddhartha Gautama, who, according to Buddhist tradition, right after his birth, takes steps and says the following. Now, Shimilakasa. No, just kidding. He didn't say that, but he did say, I am the master of the world. I am the best in the world. I am the firstborn of the world. This is my last life. There will be no more rebirth. Well, all right, but why, if I'm pointing out all these references between Gojo and Buddha, did I say he'd be a false Buddha? Well, that's because in Buddhism, Siddhartha Gautama is said to have faced Mara. Not in a direct fight, though, but when he was there meditating, trying to reach enlightenment, Mara appeared and tried to break his concentration. He ended up winning. In this case, Gojo also ends up facing a kind of Mara, a demon, which would be Sukuna himself, but he ends up losing to him. To reach enlightenment, you must let go of everything on earth, including suffering. Gojo suffered throughout the story due to the loneliness of being the strongest, and that would have led him to lose to Sukuna, who at that moment was probably representing Mara. If you watched the video up to this point and enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, share it, and also leave your comments below. What did you think about the references? If you noticed any reference that I ended up missing in the video, leave a comment, and I'll see you next time.